All right, class. So now we're on page 73, doing questions 1 through 12, and 75, doing questions 1 through 13. For numbers 1 through 3, they want me to name the shortest and the longest sides of the triangle. But if you notice, they purposely left out some information, and I can't make a decision unless I have that information. So I'm going to fill in the missing angles here. So I know that this should be 80 degrees for number 1. For number 2, this should be 75 degrees. And for number 3, this should be 35 degrees. And I know that this is 90 here. And now that I have all of the angles inside of my triangles, I can tell which side corresponds to it. So if this is 35 degrees, which is the smallest angle, I know PQ is going to be the smallest side. This is 80, so I know then that, which is the biggest angle, so I know then RQ is going to be the biggest side. And I can just put segments there if I want. Number 2, again, 45 is the smallest angle, and that's across from MN. So segment MN is the smallest. 75 is the largest, so segment LM is the largest side. For number 3, obviously the 35 is the smallest angle, so side BA is the smallest side. And 90 is the biggest angle, and the side across from it would be side AC, and that is the largest. For number 4 through 6, they want us to name the smallest and the largest angles in the triangle. Remember, we know that there is a relationship between the side and the angle. So we can see here that angle side 4 is the smallest side, so that's across from angle Z, which is the smallest. And then 8 is across from Y, so angle Y is the largest. For number 5, we can see here that 9 is the smallest side, that's across from angle S. So angle S is the smallest, and 16 is the largest side, and that's across from angle T. Angle T is the largest. For number 6, we can see here that 12 is the smallest side, so we know that's across from angle W, which is the smallest. And then I have 16, which is the largest side, across from angle V, which is the biggest. For questions 7, 8, and 9, they want us to list the sides in order from shortest to longest. Again, they've left out some information. So I know then that in this triangle, this is going to be 71 degrees. For number 8, I know that this should be 56 degrees. And for number 9, I know that this should be 45 degrees. Now that I know all of the respective angles, I can make a decision about the respective sides. So this is the smallest angle, so I know this is the smallest side. This is the next biggest one, so I know that this is the next biggest side. And I know this is the biggest angle, so I know that this is the biggest side. So then I can say then that DF is the smallest, EF is the next biggest, and ED is the largest. And you'll probably see them with inequality values. For number 8, again, I know that this is my smallest angle, so this is my smallest side. 56 is the next biggest one. This is my next bigger one, and 71 is the biggest angle, so this is the biggest side. So I can just say then that HJ is less than IJ, which is less than the biggest side, which is, forgive me, not IJ, HI. HI is 2, and that's less than IJ. Moving on to question number 9. Again, notice how this is 45 and 43 and 45, how we can barely tell the difference between these two sides, which is bigger. That's why it's so important to know the relationship between angles and sides. Smallest angle, smallest side, that one's next, and this one is the next one. So obviously you can see that PQ is the smallest, PO is the next biggest, and OQ is the largest. And of course, you'd probably see them in that order. For number 10 through 12, they want us to list the angles in order from smallest to largest. So now instead of listing the sides like we did for 7 through 9, now they want us to put the angles in order. So let's do that here. So I'm just going to go from smallest to biggest. Smallest side, so I know K is my smallest angle. Next, I know that M is my next biggest, and I know that 10, so L is my biggest angle. So for numbers 10, should have been angle K, M, and L, smallest to largest. Number 11, Obviously, 3 is the smallest side, so it's going to be angle B. Then I have 8, which is across from angle D. And then I have 10, which is across from angle C. Smallest to largest. And of course, they'll probably have inequality signs inside the answers. And finally, number 12, I can see here that 4 is the smallest side, so that corresponds to angle C. 7 comes after that, which is angle B. And then 8 is left, which is angle A. Okay? Now let's turn to page 75. Questions 1 through 13. On page 75, 1 through 3, again, they left out some information. So let's fill that in. 44 degrees. This is 60 degrees. And this is going to be 82 degrees. So for numbers 1 through 3, they want us to name the shortest and the longest sides of the triangle. I'm going to take a wild guess and say that you've gotten pretty good at this. So I'm just going to write the answers. The shortest, I'm going to write the shortest and then the longest side. So shortest is AB. AC is the longest. For number 2, AC is the shortest. BC is the longest. Number 3, AB is the shortest. AC is the longest. Looking at question number 4, they want us to name the smallest and the largest angle. Okay? This should be pretty easy to do. Well, 1, we know that this is an isosceles triangle. So their corresponding angles are going to be congruent. So angle B is going to be congruent to angle C. And I'm going to write those first because they're obviously the same size and they're smaller than 9. So obviously angle A is going to be the largest. For number 5, I hope we can see here that angle B is the smallest and angle C is the largest. For number 6, I hope we can see that angle A is the smallest and angle B is the largest. Now, when we get to number 7, they're asking us to list the sides in order from shortest to longest. Now, think about that for a second. They want us to list the sides in order from shortest to longest. Well, let me fill in the information first. This is 35 degrees, and this is going to be 20. This is going to be 60 degrees here. Okay? I want you to notice something here. Notice how this 35 degrees is pointing to this side here, and notice how this 80 degrees is pointing to that side there, how they're both pointing to the same thing. Well, this is a smaller triangle. This is a bigger triangle. So this, obviously, that's why we have the discrepancy. So when we're naming the sides from smaller to largest, we have to be careful that, we're keeping it in perspective. So my advice would be to start with the smaller triangle. Start with the smaller triangle because the smaller triangle is going to have smaller sides. So this 40 is across from DC. So that would be my smallest side. Then I have 60. That's across from BC. And then I have 80, which is across from BD, which seems to be BD. So I've done all the smaller triangle first. Now, well, I can start with the bigger triangle. And look at that. What's the smallest side here? Well, it's going to be BD. So they're both together here. And now I can go on to the bigger angles. And then I know that 70 is across from AB. And then finally, my largest side is going to be AD. And I've put all my sides in order from smallest to largest. Let's take a look at number 8. Well, here I have 3 triangles. And if you notice, let me put in this missing information here. If you notice, there are 4 40s in here. There are 4, this is going to be 30. There are 4 40s. Now, obviously, all of this, let's take a look here. This is 40 degrees for this side, and that would be this side. Obviously, all of these sides are not the same size. So my advice, again, would be start with the smallest triangle. Start with the smallest triangle. So if we look here, this is 30 degrees, and so I know then that ED is going to be my smallest. This is 40, so then AE is going to be my next big one. And then this 110-degree angle here is across from AD. So I've done the smallest triangle. Next, let's take a look at this triangle here. Obviously, I have 40 degrees, which is pointing to side AD again. Notice how they're side by side. Then I have 65, which is across from AB. Then I have 75, which is across from BD. And now I'm going to move to this triangle here. And of course, the smallest one is the last one, big one from the one that I did. So obviously 40 degrees is across from BD. Then my next biggest one is going to be 60, which is BC. And then my last one is going to be 80, which is across from side DC. So when they're asking you these types of questions, it's best to go from smallest triangle to largest triangle.